Norman Jewison. Come on, out here, come on, come on. Come on, guys, you come out here. Let Norman come here. Norman, stay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it. Okay. You got it?
Okay. Now you sit in the center.
Okay.
We'll keep this backstage for you. And now, to conduct the Q&A, we have Anath White from Los Angeles. And some of you know her background, I think, from the panel. She worked with Alan Berg, who was murdered by neo-Nazis, and also with Oliver Stone. And she is in Los Angeles currently, and all of that. Olivia Collette from Montreal, communications specialist. Thank you for joining us.
Norman, here's the microphone for you.
Thank you.
Okay. I heard you this morning on the panel, and you said about this film that it was particularly close to your heart. So I wanted to ask you why that was.
Well, I think I was in a very romantic frame of mind when I made this film. This is 1994.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 6-7 years ago. And obviously, I was in love with, I'd lived in Europe for many years, and I was in love with Italy. That's obvious. I could make some cuts in the film as I look at it now, but I had this kind of love affair with Italy, and this was such an innocent idea for a film. A girl looking for a specific person that she believed was her destiny. And in Marissa Tomei, I found a very natural actress who had stunned us with her performance with Joe Pesci in, what was the name of that picture?
My Cousin Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny, right.
And won an Oscar for that.
Right, she won an Oscar for that. And I was as impressed with as anyone else was with her performance. And then I kind of looked at her career and found that she was a very serious theater actress from New York. And so I went after her to play Faith, appropriately named, who is in love with a guy she found on a Ouija board. So you have to suspend belief in this film, but it's a very innocent, romantic kind of movie that, kind of the movies that Cary Grant used to make in Doris Day. You know, God, I made pictures with Doris Day.
Roger said that.
Yeah.
What were those pictures with Doris Day?
I did The Thrill of It All, And then I did another one. Send Me No Flowers. All right. Gee, they know my pictures better than I do. Yeah, with Rock Hudson.
She was really America's sweetheart at
She
that point,
she
wasn't
was.
she?
Doris Day was always kind of America's sweetheart, and people really kind of fell in love with her kind of innocence and her natural beauty. I mean, she was one of those actresses that captured kind of the American spirit, I think, at that time. And films were so different. I mean, this film is kind of a throwback to those days. It was only made 6 years ago, and it's rather contemporary now when I think of it because of the dialogue, you know, because Bonnie Hunt is so terrific in this movie. And she's from Chicago, and she wanted to play this role in this picture. And she was, believe it or not, the first actor that I hired in the whole film.
Before Marissa.
Before Robert Downey Jr., it was Bonnie Hunt. And I think it was because her agent, her manager, read the script and showed it to her and told her that this would be a great part.
And this was before Jerry Maguire. When
yeah.
she did, yeah.
Yeah, before the television.
Uh-huh.
So
How about Robert Downey? Did you have him in mind, or how did that?
No, I think, well, Robert Downey Jr. was always one of the most exciting young actors in America, from my point of view. He has a charm on the screen that he's very easy to seduce the camera. And he also has a kind of a wonderful sense of humor that, for instance, he can improvise like no other actor I've ever seen. I mean, it just comes out of him in character. He doesn't lose the character. He stays in character, but he's so completely involved with the person he's playing that he can just go. I mean, it's unbelievable how he can stay in character and really invent language and ideas and dialogue. And Bonnie Hunt, of course, is similar. So I had the two of them, and I was trying to keep up with both of them because they were both quite brilliant.
Well, watching this film, something came to mind, and it might be a bit of a controversial question, but I know you can handle it. It's a pet peeve of mine, the term chick flick. And it struck me that if this film had been made in the last couple of years, it might have been labeled that. What do you think of the term, and would you consider this a chick flick?
No, I think it's a romantic picture.
Right.
And so is, I made a film recently, or a few years ago, with Cher, and
Yes.
I think that picture is, also a totally romantic film.
Moonstruck.
Moonstruck, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's. But did you notice tonight when he talked about meeting her for the first time, when Robert Downey Jr. meets her for the first time, and the camera goes to the moon, because the moon, believe it or not, affects all living creatures on Earth, because we're all affected by gravity, and all animals. I live on a farm, so I can tell you this is true, that all animals relate to the moon, the phases of the moon, full moon, waning moon, and I think that's why Shakespeare and Aeschylus and many writers through the ages have dealt with the moon. That's why I did Moonstruck. So, you know, there's curious things that affect us. But anyway, this is a very innocent, sweet, hopefully entertaining and funny film. But
And it had twists, surprising moments.
Oh gosh, it has such twists in it. And the thing that attracted me, was a big attraction for me in making this film, was I had the opportunity to work with Sven Nykvist. And Sven Nykvist, as you know, was Bergman's cinematographer, and he was one of the great cinematographers in the world, in my opinion. And Marissa Tomei has never looked that good.
Luminescent.
She looked really great.
Yeah.
I mean,
seemed like there wasn't a bad
this
angle.
man can photograph people with such art and with such minimalistic approach. And my son happened to be his camera operator because he was his mentor. At least Sven was my son's mentor. So I had an opportunity to work with my son and to work with Sven and to go to Italy. And he had a free flight on Alitalia. But you know, it's a love letter in a way to romance.
Well, I found a lot of similarities between Only You and Moonstruck. And the reason I found them is because I've watched Moonstruck about 50 times in the last year. And
Is it a chick flick?
it's actually not, and I'll tell you why it's not. You know, I'm not comfortable with that term either, but I think there are certain parts, like the unusual reaction to someone saying "I love you," or "I'm in love with you." In Moonstruck, Cher says "snap out of it" and slaps Nicolas Cage in the face, and in Only You, Marissa Tomei says, "What kind of an excuse is that?" Which really, when you think about it. But there was another similarity that you touched upon a little bit earlier, and it strikes me because I happen to be half Italian, and I really would like to know what it is that draws you to Italian culture, which is so prominent in both movies.
It is. That's an interesting question. I think I'm really attracted to music, and when I think of Italy, the first thing that comes into my mind is music, is Puccini, is opera, and I think when I'm in Italy, the landscape, it's a semi-tropical country, and like southern Illinois. And so it becomes quite beautiful at certain times of the year. And there's something about the warmth of the Italian people and their love of art, their love of form and design, That's always I found attractive. So I just think they're a very enlightened group of people, and I just am attracted to Italian culture, I guess, and Italian food and all of those things. This doesn't mean that you can't find love and romance in Moscow or in Canada. Je suis un Canadien.
Moi aussi.
So you are too, I know, and we're very proud of that. But I don't know. It's a curious thing.
So, something else, I watched Moonstruck again last week, and another thing that struck me as I watched it, I remembered that was a period, not so many years before that, where a lot of the films that we were seeing about Italians were Coppola and Scorsese movies.
Yes.
And a very different story. And yours, you with Moonstruck brought something else to us.
I'm looking at a different side of the Italian culture.
Yeah, it was an interesting counterpoint to have happen when it came, I thought.
Yeah. I think Scorsese and Coppola are much closer to it, but they're dealing with power. Mm-hmm. And the Italians love dealing with power.
I guess.
How
I'm
about-
not being cheeky. I'm
No, how
not
about
being funny.
Caesar? I mean, we're talking about Julius Caesar. We're talking about all the and force and strength, forte. But they also are talking about the stars. And I don't know. I find the romantic side of Italian culture much more attractive than the mafia side.
I think I might agree with you. So,
Well,
you called. You said something this morning about your romantic period. You also have many films that are in a social justice category, if I can put a label on them. Those seem to be two strains. You have some other films that do other things too. But could you talk a little bit more tonight about your social justice movies? Like In the Heat of the Night. I just watched the Statement, the most recent one.
Right.
What can you tell the audience about why you like to make those films?
Well, I think I have a fascination with America, being Canadian. Naturally, we're fascinated with America, and I think discrimination was a big thing for me. And I got involved early on with that whole area of life here. And I guess when I was about 17 years old, I was hitchhiking on a bike I was hitchhiking in the South, and it was right after the war, and I was wearing a uniform, and I was in a Canadian Navy uniform because you could get picked up hitchhiking so quickly at that time. And I got on a bus outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And when I got on the bus, it was a very hot day. And I went to the back of the bus, and there was a kind of a window open, I guess. So I went for that. And the bus started and it stopped, and the bus driver looked in his mirror, and he looked back at me, and he said, "You trying to be funny, sailor?" And I didn't know what to say, and I was a little embarrassed. I was only 18, 19 years old, so I didn't know what to say, as I didn't know what he was talking about, and I looked up and I saw a sign, and it was hand-painted. And I knew it was hand-painted because you could see the lines weren't quite right, and it was hanging on two pieces of tin, and it was hanging in the center of the bus. Small sign, and it said, "Black people to the rear." And I really, really got upset because I got embarrassed for the people around me, because I looked and there was 4 or 5 black people sitting in the back of the bus. Then I realized the white people were sitting at the front of the bus, and I didn't know what to do. So I'm sitting there in a Canadian Navy uniform, looking kind of foolish. So I picked up my bag, and I got off the bus. And I stood there and watched the bus drive away, and it had a big effect on me. Because I knew that somehow it wasn't right, that somehow certain citizens weren't being treated the way they should be treated, and it bothered me. So that's the story of my introduction to racial prejudice. And I guess maybe that had something to do with In the Heat of the Night or Soldier Story or whatever.
Well, In the Heat of the Night, which I'm sure a lot of people remember, 1967, a number of Oscars, Sidney Poitier, was that his, did you introduce him? That was one of his very first roles, anyway.
Yeah, no, it wasn't his first picture, but it was the first major
Right.
introduction, yeah.
I'm old enough to have remembered seeing it in the theater and
Right.
remembering the impact it had.
Right.
You know, I mean, it was a powerful impact and very, very important.
I went to skiing in Sun Valley that year, and it was 1966, and I was just starting to make the film In the Heat of the Night, and I had the opportunity to meet Bobby Kennedy, who was skiing there, and his kid broke his leg in a race, and my kid broke his leg in a race, so we ended up at the hospital together, and we're just sitting there looking at each other. He says, "And what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a film director. What kind of films do you make?" And in about 2 minutes, I told him, "Well, I'm working on a film. It's about a black detective from Philadelphia who gets stuck in a southern Mississippi town." And I told him in 2 minutes about the idea of the film. And he said, "This could be a very important film, Norman."
And it was Best Picture.
He said, "Timing is everything. In politics and in art and in life itself." And I thought to myself, gee, that's a strange thing for him to say. So, Dissolve. Flash forward, we make the picture, gets nominated for Academy Award, it's nominated by the New York Critics Award, so I go to Sardi's in New York, which is a restaurant in New York where they give out the awards. And who's giving out the award but the senator from New York, Mr. Robert Kennedy. And it says, "And the winner this year of the Best Dramatic Picture," whatever, is In the Heat of the Night. And I go up, and he says, "I told you the timing was right."
It's perfect.
He had a great memory. He had a great memory. In any event, I do think timing has everything to do with our appreciation of art and films and so on. It's hitting something that you're thinking about right now, and that's what makes a film more unique.
You've managed to extract some really important performances from a lot of actors and created some really iconic imagery and scenes that we associate freely so well. You know, I'm thinking of Jesus Christ Superstar, Fiddler on the Roof, and obviously the performance, Cher's performance and Nicolas Cage's performance in Moonstruck. How would you describe how you work with actors? How do you get that kind of stuff out of them?
don't know. I think it's like Henry Mancini once told me, it's different strokes for different folks. It's hard to answer because the relationship between a director and an actor is one of trust. That's what it's really about. It's about the fact that the actor knows that the director trusts the actor, or the actor wouldn't even be there. So you keep reminding the actor, of all the people in the world, you are the one. You are the one to play this role. Because I chose you. And
No pressure.
And that actor responds to that because they know that the arts are a very competitive business. And I do think that it's a matter of trust. And I think of an actor, Sidney Poitier was always very concerned about Rod Steiger, because he would say, he can go over the top, he can get too big. And I said, I'll watch him. I'll watch him. And I think then when Rod Steiger won the Academy Award for his performance, I think it was recognized that he had given a performance in that picture from his heart that was very honest and deep and true. So I think it's all about believability, isn't it? In the end result. Do you believe that scene? Do you believe that person on the screen? That's what I think the audience is asking themselves every moment they're watching a picture. Do I believe this? Do I accept this? And it's a kind of there's something there in every performance. I was looking at this film tonight, which is a film I haven't seen in many, many years. And this wonderful screen and this terrific sound. And I realized how much music there is in this picture. I'd forgotten. And I was sitting there looking at it, and I was watching the performance of the guy in the hotel. Remember? The clerk. The Italian clerk. And I remember working with him on that scene. And he didn't speak that much English. But I remember working with him on the scene, and I was saying to myself, geez, I don't know whether I believe. And I looked at it tonight, and his timing is terrific. The guy is great. I mean, that's a terrific performance. And if you're Italian and you're working in an American film, so you're constantly surprised by the artist.
We had a talk on the elevator today where I told you that I had known someone you worked very closely with at the American Film Institute, Bob Boyle, a great production designer that Norman worked with, 3-4 pictures, maybe?
Yes.
Who died last summer at the age of 101. And you were very close.
He was a remarkable character, wasn't he?
He really was.
And I really mourn his death because Bob Boyle was one of the great Hollywood production designers of all time. He did the Hitchcock picture.
North by Northwest was one of them.
Yeah. And he did
I
so
think
many
he did
pictures.
4
He
or
did
5.
Fiddler on the Roof with me.
And Thomas Crown.
Thomas Crown Affair with Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway. Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to use that to lead into was that I know you committed quite a bit of time and love to the Canadian film program in Toronto, which I had to write it down to get the exact name, but
Canadian Film Center. Yeah.
Canadian Film Center. Do you want to say something about why did you do that, or why do you?
Well, I think America has the American Film Center. The British have the British Film Center. The Australians have the Australian Film Center. And when I came back to Canada in 1978 from Europe as a returning settler to take up residence in Canada again, I realized we didn't have a film center. We didn't have a center where you gathered together people who really wanted to make film and so on. So we established in Toronto the Canadian Film Center, which is an advanced film teaching facility. It's not a school. It's after university. After you've been to university and studied communications, then you're ready to make a film, or you're ready to do something wonderful and stun the world with your brilliance. And then you come to the Canadian Film Center. So,
And doesn't Canada do better in supporting film than the United States does? I mean, in a government sense.
I wouldn't say that,
No?
because American universities, this university has a big center of cultural expression and communications, and so does NYU and UCLA and USC. No, I think America does a pretty good job with its young people. I just think that the Canadian Film Center is really kind of unique in the fact that it's graduating a number of talented young writers and directors who are working all over the world, and a lot of them in Hollywood. So.
But the Canadian film industry is really well, it's really quite small. Firstly, and it struggles a lot. One of the things it benefits from is public funding, but that's also a burden in some cases. How can Canadian filmmakers who come to your facility, who come to your institute, how do you tell them to grow from that? I mean, it's not the same industry as the American industry.
No, but they have to get out and compete. I mean, the arts is a very competitive industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, the film industry is highly competitive, and unfortunately, the ones that are most successful, I'll get it, most successful.
Got it?
I got it. Most successful achieve recognition. I mean, we're all competing. I mean, it's all about entertainment, isn't it? Everybody wants to be entertained. I mean, you want to be entertained on your phone. You want to be entertained. Can I get? I can't even operate my phone. I've got a droid, and it's so complicated that if you breathe on it, it will change. It will call somebody. I'm talking to people I don't even want to talk to. I can get anything. I can get anything on this phone. I can get my emails. I can get things. Yeah, I don't need all this stuff. I really don't need it. All I want to do is press a button and say hello, and I want to hang up. I'm so sick of technology. I mean.
And something I wondered, I know we need to start audience questions fairly soon, but what do you think about this idea that we're going to be watching movies on those little screens?
Oh, God, it just appalls me. I mean, I love this big screen. I just love it.
It's how they're made to be shown that way.
This is one of the best theaters of any film festival I've ever been at. And it's right here in Champaign, Illinois. I mean, it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it's unique, and I hope they don't tear it down, because they will. They all want to watch films on their phone and on a postage stamp. I can't even read the numbers; they're so small.
Roger had a really provocative question that I think we should ask before we turn it over to the audience. And I have no idea what this is, but you will know it. The question is, ask about your search for a whorehouse location.
That's when I first met Roger. He worked for the Chicago Sun-Times. I was doing a film called Gaily Gaily, which is an adaptation of the Ben Hecht novel. And I always thought that Ben Hecht, being a journalist from Chicago, captured America in a much more honest way than most other novelists. So I fell in love with this book about this young man coming to Chicago and looking for truth and looking for, he had some idea, some wonderful inflated idea about the glory of journalism and so on. And, and the Everly sisters are running a whorehouse in Chicago, and they were running this marvelous brothel. And I got Melina McCoury to come to America to play the role of the madam of this brothel. And this was a struggle between the robber barons on one corner, the beginning of the Tammany Hall machine on the other corner, and the Wobblies on the other corner. And it was all happening in Chicago. And Chicago was the center of the world, hog butcher to the world. And I just fell in love with Ben Hecht and this novel. So I came to Chicago, and the first person I looked up was the film critic. And Roger Ebert was well known as a film critic. So I called him up and I said, have you ever read Ben Hecht? Oh, yeah. Well, I'm doing a film based on Ben Hecht, and I'm here in Chicago. I'm looking for locations, and I was wondering about the Everly Sisters brothel. He said, you mean the whorehouse? And I said, oh, yes. Well, it was a very beautiful, as I understand, it was a very beautiful place, and it attracted, Carl Sandburg, who was driving a streetcar at the time and writing poetry, and Paderewski, who was the great pianist, and they all went to the Everly Sisters because they could have drinks and they could sit around and talk to beautiful women. And I don't know what took place there, but this is in the film. So I was introduced to Chicago by Roger Ebert, and man, that was a trip. He took me to every bar, everything, and we finally found the Everly Sisters establishment, which was right next door to the Cardinals' house in Chicago. So I thought that was quite appropriate. But anyway.
And did you make a film, that film?
Yes, I made that film. I'm going to show it in New York on May 25th.
What's the title?
Gaily Gaily.
Gaily Gaily.
And if you look up on your wonderful internet or phone,
Got mine here.
you can probably get it on your, you can get it on your iPhone. But anyway, it was an interesting picture. It starred Beau Bridges and Kidder, Margot Kidder, and it had a wonderful cast. You've got to look it up. It's a very good picture. It's about innocence. It's about America at the turn of the century, and it's about America. It starts out with a healthy body and a healthy mind makes money. A healthy body and a healthy mind makes money. and it's interesting. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Gaily.
Or maybe we are. It looks like it's time to open up the floor for audience questions from the audience.
Right here, right in front of you. Okay.
All right.
I have a comment that leads me into my question, and I wanted to comment on the whole chick flick thing. And I wouldn't call this film a chick flick for two reasons. And one is because I think it kind of debases the excellence of the film. And two is because it's just not a chick flick. I noticed that Marissa Tomei spent the entire picture trying to find her true love, seeking out her destiny, and so did Robert Downey Jr. They were essentially like the same character, just opposite sex. So I think that this film can speak to both males and females. So, you know, the comedy will make men and women laugh. The romance will move men and women. So I consider it not a chick flick, but like a lover's flick. And I wanted to ask you, like, the themes of it being a lover's flick and the themes of destiny, how much of that was you? Like, how much do you relate to all of that, really?
Well, I don't know. I think I relate to every scene in the film. Films are really the product of their makers. The director sees the film in their own mind. They see the film before it's shot. So therefore, working with the writer, working with with all of the various departments, and they have the advantage of going on location before the actors get there. So the director really has, in a way, seen what's going to happen in their mind's eye. So the film is in your mind's eye. So that's why I think the director is always answering questions. Well, where do you want the chair? Well, where do you want the camera? Well, how do you see her dressed? Well, where did they make their entrance from? So, well, they come down the stairs. Don't you see? Oh, you mean those stairs over there? Yeah, those stairs over there. Okay, get the camera back here. And now, nobody else has been in this place except the director and the production designer and the set decorator. So, and the first assistant director. So, and the cameraman. So there's only 4 or 5 people who have ever been to where the film is being shot. So everyone else has to be brought into this kind of image. And when the 4 or 5 people first came to that location, the director said, usually, well, this is the way I work anyway, oh gosh, look at this. How can we shoot this? Why don't we have them come in from here and we'll pan over here and then we'll see this and then, well, you know, this is the way things happen. Like there was a guy with a vacuum cleaner in the hotel, and she came in to the desk clerk in this film, and she said, I want to send a fax, because we didn't have email. We want to send a fax, and I want to tell this man that my marriage is over. I'm not coming home to be married. And the man got a little upset because she was crying, and he didn't know what to say. And the first thing he said was, stop the vacuum cleaner, for Christ's sake. We got a serious problem here. And so the guy stopped the vacuum cleaner. So those kind of moments of sensitivity only come when you have the opportunity to see something happening at that moment. that idea came to me when the guy was working the vacuum cleaner at that moment that I walked into the lobby, and I said, this is the scene where she says she wants to send a fax saying she's not going to be married. And she's crying. And all we could hear was, what? What are you saying? Because the guy was working the vacuum cleaner. So I think those kind of things make movies. I think that's what movies are about.
And the word that came to me just now was conjuring. That's kind of the director and the team that you have around you. You're conjuring. You're making something for the rest of us to see that starts in your head.
Yeah, it starts up here somewhere, and it just materializes somehow.
The magic of movies.
It is magical in a way. It is when you sit back and look at all the work that went into it.
Before we go to the next question, I just wanted to say, I wanted to clarify, I wasn't saying that this was a chick flick. I was saying that label is thrown around a lot at films that are often about women. And I don't like that. I think it denigrates the material. And so that was why I raised the question.
Okay,
So I don't think it's a chick flick.
you're forgiven.
Okay, thank you.
Where's the next question coming from?
Right here in front.
You mentioned the essential role that timing plays in films, and I was wondering, in what sense did the timing of the early '90s play in this movie, as the late '60s did in The Heat of the Night?
Asking about timing
Yeah.
when you made that
Well,
this film.
I think In the Heat of the Night came out in 1967, and if memory serves, in the 60s, America was going through a civil rights revolution. I mean, cities were being burned down, and things were happening, and I think when you make films about a subject that everyone is concerned about, is thinking about, then that's the perfect timing to release the film. Do people always think about love and romance? I don't know. But the timing seemed to be right for certain films. I don't know about films like Fiddler or Jesus Christ Superstar, because they were films that were made from Broadway productions that were very popular all over the world. But I'm talking about films about us as a people. And I do think that timing has got a lot to do with it. As I remember, Martin Luther King was assassinated
1968.
in the day before the Academy Awards in 1967. And In the Heat of the Night won the Academy Award in 1967. So I think America was going through a period of re-examination of discrimination, and I think in a way that made the film more significant. Does that answer your question?
Well, there was also the part of how was Only You a product of its time as well?
I don't think Only You has anything to do with great timing, unless you wanted to go to Italy.
Is it timeless, maybe?
Only you is a romantic fantasy. It's old-fashioned in the way that Doris Day films were old-fashioned. In other words, there's an innocence about this film that I found rather attractive watching it tonight. I don't know if anybody else did, but I found it rather attractive. And I thought that here was a girl who believed totally in her own destiny. And she was very serious about it. All the way through the film, she's looking for someone who's not even introduced for 25 minutes. I mean, Damon Bradley, we never meet until 3/4 of the way through the film. Even though Robert Downey Jr. proposes to pretend he does that, and so that kind of deception is despicable, but it's forgiven by the fact that we know he loves her. And I think that kind of complication is attractive in true love, because I think true love is not all one street. I think it has both sides, and I think I can't stand my husband. I can't stand him. People say to me, God, I can't wait for him to go out of town. I know that person loves him. She loves him, but she can't. Jesus, he gets on her nerves. I mean, after you live together for 20, 30 years, I mean, it's surprising we all don't. But anyway,
One of the things that really blows my mind about your movies is from the very beginning, the very first film you directed, 40 Pounds of Trouble, you have always surrounded yourself with the best technicians in the world. You were the first guy to use Hal Ashby, and then you backed him as a director, and he was your editor. You were the guy to use Haskell Wechsler and Ozzie Morris and all of these great, great technical people. And tonight we saw it with Sven Nykvist and Luciana Origi. And how did you know this from the very, very beginning? Did you get it from your television background, or where did you get that knack to know to surround yourself with these kind of perfect craftsmen?
Wouldn't you do the same thing? I mean, if you're going to do something, if you're going to embark on a voyage in the theater or in film, for God's sake, surround yourself with people who have done it and stunned the world with their brilliance. People who have already made it. Always surround yourself with talent. And I think most directors try to do that. And I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky that I've been able to talk all these talented people into working for me. So, or with me. So that's the only answer I can give. I admire excellence in any form. And so I'm quite aware of what people's contribution is in every film and every television show and every theater performance I see. So I make note of that. I think about that. And I say, gee, I'd always like to work with that person. Or I'd always like to work with that director, with that cameraman. And and also I think it's a matter of relationships. You build relationships. And I had a relationship with Sven Nykvist, and I did the film with him that I made from the Broadway play with now I can't remember the title of the picture. with the religious one I made on
Agnes of God.
Agnes of God. When I made Agnes of God, there wasn't anybody I wanted to photograph that film but Sven Nykvist. And maybe it was because of all of the films he had done with Ingmar Bergman. Maybe it was because I felt he had an understanding of religious and spiritual feelings. I don't know what it was, but I went to Sven and I gave him the script and I talked to him and pleaded with him. And he came to Canada and we shot that film in Canada with Meg Tilly and Annie Bancroft and Jane Fonda. And I think those kind of relationships come from watching films, watching everyone. Anyway, this has gone on far too long, and I thank everybody for being here and asking such great questions. I mean, very stimulating. And I love this festival. I just think it's terrific.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
So lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.